Hey everybody! Alright, it's reproduction video time. Alright, let's review the reproductive system. So, first things first, what is the reproductive system? Well, the reproductive system is a group of organs working together to make new life, to make an offspring. And in the reproductive system, males and females have different organs. Now, even though they're different, they have complementing functions. They have jobs that work together to create this new life. And in humans, and in birds, and in reptiles, and in mammals, and some insects, we have something called internal fertilization. Internal fertilization is when the sperm meets the egg, or fertilization happens inside of the female, happens inside the body. So there's a great picture of internal fertilization right here. You can see it with these chickens. The sperm is meeting the egg cell inside the woman, so fertilization is happening inside the female chicken. On the other hand, external fertilization happens outside of the body. We can see that in a lot of fish. See, this fish kind of swims by, lays its eggs, and then swims away. The male fish swims by, sprays its semen on those eggs, and then it swims away. It's very low energy for their parents. They just lay what they need to lay and then live on living their life. They can have a lot of babies that way, but the problem is a lot of those infants, a lot of those babies will end up dying, usually being eaten or having the eggs move because they're out in the environment. With internal fertilization, you can't have that many kids at once. And it's a little bit more cost efficient for the body, right? It takes a little bit more energy to make this happen. But you're more guaranteed to have a good viable offspring, or a good viable baby. Alright, now that that's out of the way, let's look at some parts. We got a chart here, I got a chart here. Alright, first things first, the testicle. The testicle is right here, it usually hangs in the scrotum. The testicle is there to create sperm. Males can create sperm continually after puberty. That means after puberty happens, when they become an adult, males can create sperm for the rest of their lives. That's not how it works for women, and we'll get there in a moment. After the testicle, we have the vas deferens. The vas deferens is this tube here. This tube runs up from the testicle, and we can see it on this picture here as well. It's this purple tube here. It runs after the epididymis right here. This is the vas deferens. And it's just a sperm duct. It's just there to carry and move the sperm from the testicles to the prostate. And here in the prostate and the seminal vesicles, they meet here. And that is where they put in extra nutrients and add that to the sperm. They add these nutrients and proteins and enzymes to the sperm, and that's what makes it semen. So, before this point, we have sperm, we have sperm, we have sperm, and now here we have semen because the seminal vesicle and the prostate gland both add nutrients. Now, those are not the only parts we need to know. We also need to know the urethra and the penis. So the urethra is this little duct here after the prostate gland. It connects the bladder to the outside of the male body, and it goes through the penis. Now the urethra is there to carry urine or pee out of the bladder to the outside of the body. It's to getting rid of that waste. It also carries semen, which can be deposited in the vagina. And that's kind of what the penis is used for. It's used to help get rid of waste, like urine, but it is also there to deposit semen into the vagina during intercourse. Alright, so those are the male parts we need to know. Next up, we need to know the female parts. So, first things first, the ovary. The ovary is right here on the picture, and on this picture here we have a couple of places we can see the ovaries. Now the ovaries carry ova, or eggs. And women have these eggs from birth. That means they don't make any new ones. You are born with the eggs that you will have. Males can continually make sperm. women don't continually make eggs. They are born with how many they have from the very beginning. Now, that means eventually a woman can run out of eggs, and that usually happens sometime in the mid to late 40s. Depends on the person. Now, every month, one of those ova, one of those eggs, start to develop, and they leave the ovary. And they leave the ovary through something called a fallopian tube or an oviduct, depending on what anatomy book you look in. And the fallopian tube or the oviduct are there to help the egg along, to bring it to the uterus. Now, fertilization can happen in the fallopian tubes, but it can also happen in the uterus. Either way, the uterus is a muscular organ where a fertilized egg will develop into a baby. And that fertilized egg will attach here on the sides of the uterus, and that's where it'll begin to grow. Now, at the bottom of the uterus, we have a tight ring of muscles known as the cervix. The cervix is there to keep the baby in place until birth, and it prevents other things coming through the vagina into the uterus. It blocks things from getting through. The only thing it will let through is semen and sperm. The vagina, which is right underneath the cervix, it is right here, it is right there, and it is right there. The vagina is a muscular portion that leads from the cervix to the outside. And that's where the penis is going to enter to deposit semen, or that's the way the baby's going to exit when it leaves the uterus. So the vagina is also known as the birth canal because of that. The other part we need to know here is we also have a bladder and a urethra. Now, if you look at this picture closely here, the bladder and the urethra are separate from the vagina. So the urethra is a little bit above the vagina, and that is strictly for urine to pass out of the body. Alright, so now that we know a few of the parts, let's talk about some other things. The development of the reproductive system. The reproductive system starts to develop in a human body around the ages of 10 to 16, and that transition, that change, is called puberty. And a lot of different changes happen during puberty. Boys' voices will break, girls' hips can get wider, for boys, hair starts growing on the face. For both boys and girls, there's going to be underarm hair that grows. A lot of different things start to change. Your sexual organs essentially begin to become their adult versions. As a child, you don't have the reproductive systems fully functional yet. During puberty, they become functional. They become the adult version of the reproductive system. And in relation to that, the menstrual cycle usually begins for women. Menstrual cycle takes about 28 days, roughly a month. And during this process, what happens, and we can see it here in this diagram pretty well, an egg develops, so an egg matures in the ovary, and it leaves the ovary. When that happens, the uterus begins to prepare for pregnancy, and it does that by developing this lining. It's called endometrium, but it develops this lining around the uterus. And if pregnancy does not happen, the uterus sheds this lining out, and this shedding of the lining is called menstruation, or a lot of people know it as a period. The blood that's involved will come out of the cervix and out of the vagina, and that kind of marks the end of that cycle, and then we have a new cycle that begins, and this will keep happening until there's no more eggs, essentially. So that's the menstruation cycle. So the menstruation cycle will also not happen if the egg is fertilized. And usually fertilization happens in about 3 really simple steps. The egg leaves the ovary. Once the egg has left the ovary, if there's sperm there, the sperm will find it and fertilize it, and then the egg will settle in the uterus to begin growing, to develop into a child. Now, sperm doesn't have to come in while the egg is coming out. If there's sperm in the uterus left over from, previous sex, then the egg can still be fertilized. Sperm can live in the uterus for up to 5 days, So even though it's been only 3 days since a person have had sex, that can still fertilize an egg. Alright, so developing baby, last slide here. Once that egg is fertilized, it begins dividing. That cell makes, one cell becomes 2, 2 become 4, 4 become more and more and more and more. Eventually you'll have an embryo, and this embryo attaches to the uterine wall. What happens then is a placenta forms between the baby and the mother. And through this placenta, nutrients are passed, oxygen is passed, and any waste material that the baby has, things like CO2 that we normally breathe out, is passed to the mom to get rid of it. Now, the blood never mixes, and you can see that in this picture here. But because the blood is so close to each other, the mom blood and the baby blood, it's able to pass oxygen between the two without them ever having to touch. Alright, that was a lot of information. I hope that was helpful. You guys will do great on the quiz. I'll see you all soon. Bye.